morning. Welcome to this site of Inside Nigeria, breakfast show on Leadership Television. Thank God it's Friday, incidentally, the last Friday in the month of August 2025. My name is Winifred Gwebo, your host of the program. On today's show, we are looking at newspaper review, looking at what the national papers are saying, including Nigeria's foremost Friday newspaper, Leadership Friday. Let's go there. Let's see what leadership has on its menu this Friday. Leadership's leading story says federal government ASUU dispute lingers as minister denies past agreements. Federal government ASUU dispute lingers as minister denies past agreements. Also, same leading story on Nigerian Tribune this Friday. Alausa insists federal government has no binding part with union. Says Yayale Ahmed-led committee to renegotiate with ASUU. Federal government union meeting phase 2 hold. Kickers to the leading story on Leadership Friday this Friday. Federal government ASUU dispute lingers as minister denies past agreements in court. Still on Leadership newspaper, Tinubu says every trip is for the people's benefit. Tinubu returned back from a state visit to Brazil yesterday night. And of course, the photo on Leadership Friday is that picture where ministers and House of Rep Speaker went to receive him at the airport from his trip to Abuja yesterday. We have right to let President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Minister of FCT, Barrister Nyesom Wike, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, Deputy Senate President Senator Barau Jibrin, and Kwara State Governor Abdurrahman Abdurazik during the President's arrival in Abuja yesterday from trips to Japan and Brazil. Leading picture on the cover of Leadership newspaper. Of course, from those visits, the President says the trip is for the people's benefit. The story continues on page 15 of Leadership. NNPC are planning joint operations with private refiners to rescue refineries. Coming from the CEO of NNPCL, Ojulari. Federal government awards 17-year-old Nafisa 200,000 naira for clinching world title in English. ACF, the Arewa Consultative Forum, condemns demolition of Alabarago Market in Lagos. Paramilitary agencies heads to earn salaries for life. Cholera kills 8 in Zamfara, while NGE, that is Nigerian Guild of Editors, flays killing of journalists in Gaza. With that, we move towards the masthead of Leadership Friday. Dangote to build $2.5 billion fertilizer plant in Ethiopia, maintain 60% ownership. Leading story today on Leadership newspaper. From there, we move to the page 3 where we have our stand. Today's stand is on mental illness in correctional centers. Mental illness in correctional centers. It says the recent report from the Nigerian Correctional Service, NCOS, that no fewer than 8,246 inmates are currently suffering from mental illness across the custodial centers nationwide is disturbing. During the third public hearing of the Independent Investigative Panel on alleged corruption, abuse of power, torture, and other inhumane treatment by the NCOS, the Assistant Controller General of Corrections, ACG, in charge of medical services, Dr. Glory Essien, said despite interventions, the scale of mental health issues far exceeded the available resources. According to the World Health Organization, a mental disorder is an illness characterized by notable behavioral and psychological expression, which is linked with either a distressing symptom or impairment in functioning in one or more major areas. We move towards the masthead. In our opinion, addressing prison congestion and human rights abuses in Nigerian prisons requires a multifaceted approach that emphasizes both immediate reforms and long-term strategies. Improving prison infrastructure and expanding capacity are essential to reducing overcrowding. This can be achieved through increased government funding, constructing new facilities, and upgrading existing ones to meet international standards. Reforming judicial processes is crucial, and establishing specialized courts for minor offenses can expedite the justice system and alleviate congestion. Excerpts from today's stand in leadership is on mental illness in correctional centers. From our stand, we have to move to the back page where we have conversation with ASUU. Today's conversation is on Nigeria's top oil boss walking into a trap. Nigeria's top oil boss walking into a trap. Conversation with ASUU. Quote from the column says, the refinery is not Ojulari's private company. He cannot decide his fate one way or the other to please the unions or any vested interest. Today's conversation with ASUU Isiekweneh. ASUU Isiekweneh is the editor-in-chief of Leadership Newspaper Limited. Today's conversation, his conversation today is on Nigeria's top oil boss walking into a trap, talking about the CEO, GMD of Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Bayo Ojulari. We move to Ghana Must Go before we leave the back page where we have news. APC Chairman Tess Ganduje. Tinubu directed me to work closely with you for party unity. And of course, Ghana Must Go with his witty and sharp response says that statement has implications. Tinubu directed me to work closely with you for party unity. APC Chairman Tess Ganduje and Ghana Must Go replied that statement has implications. On that note, we conclude review of Leadership Friday this Friday. Don't forget to log into the website of Leadership for continuation of these headline stories, the stand, these inside pages, and of course the back page conversation with ASUU. From Leadership, we move to the next paper we have on our lineup, paper with also similar headline story with that of Leadership Friday, and that is Nigerian Tribune. Nigerian Tribune's leading story says federal government denies signing any agreement with ASUU. Describes document as draft, sets up technical team to fine-tune government's proposal. That leading story continues on page 3 of Nigerian Tribune. Federal government denies signing any agreement with ASUU. Describes document as draft, sets up technical team to fine-tune government's proposal. Leading story on today's Nigerian Tribune, Friday, August 29, 2025. El-Rufai says 2027, I'm not contesting any position. SS crude accounts now $535,823. NEC orders accelerated reforms. Ibadan Convention, PDP set to inaugurate Fintri, Makinde, Adeleke, Fubara, Saraki, 105 others as organizing members. The story continues on page 5 of Nigerian Tribune. Federal government targets 1 week passport delivery, vows to end racketeering. Editors Guild decries killing of journalists in Gaza. Abuja Cardinal Road safe, Omokri claims as he tours road. The story is on page 30 of Nigerian Tribune. Of course, the picture on the cover of Nigerian Tribune has it on Osun public servants hold solidarity rally for Adeleke, says he's empathetic to workers. Of course, it's no longer news that the Osun State governor has taken the federal government to the Supreme Court over his local government council funds release. That takes us to the stories about the masthead of Nigerian Tribune. Nigerian Tribune, PDP considering Jonathan Obi for 2027 presidency. Bauchi governor confirms. That is also a leading story on one of the papers we have in our lineup that we are seeing shortly, and that is Daily Sun. PDP considering Jonathan Obi for 2027 presidency. Bauchi governor confirms. That story is on page 5 of Nigerian Tribune. Lastly, we are under attack. NNPC CEO cries out. Oil workers back reforms. Is on that note we conclude review of front headline stories on Nigerian Tribune this Friday. For more, log into the website of Nigerian Tribune, www.tribuneonlineng.com. From Nigerian Tribune, we move over to the next paper on our lineup, and that is Daily Sun. Like I said earlier, Daily Sun's leading stories on PDP zoning arrangement. Governor Bala Mohammed reveals opposition parties' plan, says PDP considers Obi Jonathan for 2027, just like we had in Nigerian Tribune. ADC tackles INEC demands BVC. Of course, it's not so clear. Anyway, we'll move towards the masthead of Daily Sun. Federal government ASUU in battle of wits. No signed agreement with union. Government insists constitutes committee to review union's demands. Leading story in all the papers today. Federal government ASUU in battle of wits. No signed agreement with union. Government insists constitutes committee to review unions' demands. Lastly, on the cover of Daily Sun newspaper is the last story beside the masthead. Anglican Church sets up visitation panel over sale of Awka Diocese land. Archbishop, councillor, others invited to appear before panel in Abuja. Anglican Church sets up visitation panel over sale of Awka Diocese land. Archbishop, council, others invited to appear before panel in Abuja. That concludes the review of front headline stories on Daily Sun newspaper this Friday. For more, log into www.thesun.ng. From Daily Sun, we move over to the next paper on our lineup, and that is The Punch. The Punch says tariff war. Federal government intervenes as states discos rift deepens. Next summons meeting between state energy commissioners and disco operators. Tariff reduction can't work, coming from discos. Our focus on power sector reforms commissioners. Kickers to the leading story on The Punch. Motorists lament slow Shagamu Ijebu Ode Road repairs. That story is on page 40 of The Punch. Motorists lament slow Shagamu Ijebu Ode Road repairs. Awaiting trial, inmates feeding gobs 14 billion naira in 8 months. That story is on page 39 of The Punch. Awaiting trial, inmates feeding gobs 14 billion naira in 8 months. That is why judicial reforms is very, very necessary in view of the circumstances. It's also part of the editorial I'll start today in Leadership, where it talked about mental illness in correctional centers. Awaiting trial, inmates feeding gobs 14 billion naira in 8 months. That story is on page 39 of The Punch. Still on The Punch newspaper, headline stories: INEC pushes back as opposition rejects Southwest voter figures. How 8,000 naira dispute led to Lagos market killing, coming from traders. Federal government eyes 21% GDP boost with e-governance bill. We move towards the masthead. Federal government defense passport price hike to 100,000 naira, 200,000 naira. Above the masthead of The Punch, federal government ASUU clash over 2021 agreement. NEC unveils roadmap for $1 trillion economy by 2030. Long-term neglect hindering refineries revamp, coming from NNPC. And of course, that concludes review of front headline stories on The Punch this Friday. For more, log into the website of The Punch newspaper. As we move to the last paper we have on our menu this Friday, and that is Vanguard. Vanguard is still talking politics. It says 2027 opposition parties battle INEC over voters' data. Of course, that was one of the leading stories we just saw on The Punch newspaper cover story. 2027 opposition parties battle INEC over voters' data. We'll take the kickers one by one. ADC, Labour Party, PDP, Atiku, force data, demand probe. No irregularities in Osun voter pre-registration figures. INEC polls are in danger. ADC, Labour Party calls for vigilance, says INEC's body language frightening. Queries Osun's 393,000 new voters in 1 week. Demands forensic audit. PDP blames weak institutions for statistically implausible voter figures in Osun. Atiku demands probe into contrived voter figures in Osun. 6 amendments of Electoral Act, stoppage of manual resource collation. We are ready to help INEC address disparities. Forensic experts. These are kickers, quite enormous kickers to the leading story on Vanguard. 2027 opposition parties battle INEC over voters' data. Of course, it was reported that during the voter registration exercise in the Southwest Zone in a week, that the INEC registered over 393,000 new voters. Of course, this is not going down well with opposition, who has picked holes in that registration figure. Still on Vanguard newspaper, 2027, Amechi rules out stepping down, declares interest in ADC presidential ticket. That story continues on page 9 of Vanguard newspaper. Terrorism, DSS files charges against 9 suspects over Benue Plateau killings. Court declines to stop Rivers local government poll as police restrict movement. Diaspora inflows hit $600 million monthly coming from Kadoso, the CBN governor. And we move ahead to the masthead of Vanguard and above. Dangote Group, Ethiopia signed deal to build $2.5 billion fertilizer plant. Federal government ASUU disagree over agreements. Under attack, some people are plotting to unseat me, NNPCL GCEO Ojulari. Guild of Editors condemns killing of journalists in Gaza. That story is on page 9 of Vanguard. Guild of Editors condemns killing of journalists in Gaza, where the war has been taking place. And that story is also on the cover of all the papers we saw on our review this morning. It's on that note we conclude today's Inside Nigeria, brought to you on Leadership Television. For more, don't forget to log into the website of the papers and of course of Leadership for more of the stories. My name is Winifred Weber. Don't also forget to join us on this station for news on the hour. Thanks once again for joining us.
Leadership TV for God and country.
Be part of our brand. Leadership for God and country.